Hey, welcome to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. This week, I am talking to the Real Estate Investment Club of Houston. They had me come and talk about the market, the apartment market, the investment commercial real estate market. And so today, what you'll get is part one of two parts of the Real Estate Investment Club presentation I did in Houston. So sit back and enjoy, and I hope you like the show. DJ, hit that music, please.
Support for this program comes from the Digital Broadcasting Network, presenting podcasts and web series from everyday people who have an extraordinary passion to make the world a better place.
All right, guys. My name is Kevin Riles. I'm a commercial real estate broker, and this is the first time I've been in front of Rich. I was telling Lisa, Linda and Belinda. Sorry.
Remember that.
Yeah. I was telling Linda that years ago I had the contract, and I'll give you my background here in a second. I had the contract to list all the HUD foreclosures in Houston. That was kind of my claim to fame in the Houston real estate market. So when Rich Club used to meet at University of Houston many years ago, they used to have me come and talk about the HUD process. We used to list about 100 properties a month. For that, I had that contract for 5 years, me and another broker. So it's been a long time since I've talked to Rich Club. In fact, didn't know y'all had moved until you sent me the email. And so I think I've been spamming Belinda with my e-blast, and so I got a email back asking for me would I be willing to come and talk more intimately about commercial real estate. So just to give you my background again, my name is Kevin Riles, R-I-L-E-S. I am a commercial real estate broker. I have been in business as of last month for 20 years. So I was licensed in October of 1998. I was an engineer by day at ExxonMobil and a real estate agent by night and on the weekends. I got into real estate by buying my very first property in 1996, 97, towards the end of 96. I bought a duplex in what is known as Third Ward on the corner of Wheeler and Delano. And I lived in one side at the bottom. I rented out the top. And the guy that sold me the property became my mentor. He was an engineer by day, and he was a real estate agent by night and on the weekends. And he was a real estate investor, more importantly. And so I looked at him and said, oh, I can do that. So got my license and then started kind of helping coworkers selling properties on the side. And I was an e-business project manager because I'm a computer engineer, computer science major. So was traveling back and forth for Exxon. And when I would get home the next day, I'm out there selling property. I would take a lot of long lunches to sell property. And so anyway, long story short, my intent when I got my license actually was to become a real estate investor full time. And I actually ended up liking it because I was always the talking engineer. The science stuff came easy to me, but I actually like to do the talking. And so at that time, technical sales and all the things, business development weren't as big in engineering as it is now. So I found my calling with real estate. So long story short, I've been full time real estate broker and investor for the last 18 years. And I've run the gamut. I grew up on the residential side. I was the foreclosure king in Houston for about 6 years straight, listing for HUD, Chase, and other lenders during that time period. And that's what actually catapulted me into doing commercial real estate full time. Well, I was full time, but commercial real estate exclusively. But a lot of my clients that bought those single family homes on the HUD side would come back to me afterwards and want to reposition their capital into a small multifamily. So my firm now, Kevin Riles Commercial, what we do is we specialize in small multifamily. My specialty is plus or minus 100 units. Now I've done and do bigger deals. I just closed on a 172 unit deal. I've just closed making an offer on a 200 unit deal. But as far as listing and representation, I kind of stay plus or minus 100 units. And you might ask why not go after the bigger deals? Well, one, the big guys like JLL, like HFF, like Grubb & Ellis, like Cushwake, those guys have a lot more money and a lot more resources to go after those institutional type of listings. I grew up working with guys like yourself and ladies like yourself, and so the small investors, medium-sized investor partnerships are kind of where I'm used to working with, and then helping them grow into larger portfolios. So you'll see on my listings, I have everything from a 4-plex all the way to, I'll show you a case study here of a 44 unit as well. My average deal price-wise is probably plus or minus $2 million, and my average unit count is plus or minus, I would say 40 in Houston. So from a practical standpoint, a lot of my deals just by default are C-class properties. C-class properties, and I'll talk about that in a second. We also do other investment, so we're essentially a small boutique investment brokerage. Multifamily makes up a majority of my portfolio. However, I just closed on a retail center. Anything that produces a cap rate, we specialize in, especially small to medium size. And then we do some tenant representation as well, which in the commercial world is basically representing tenants looking for, specifically in our case, retail and industrial space. So that's kind of a gamut of my company, a little bit about my background. What Belinda asked me to do today was to kind of just talk about the general multifamily market in Houston. And what I would say in a word is it's hot, 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 hot. And so what does that mean? So because I don't have the resources to have a full-time research analyst, my friends, I borrowed my friend's report at JLL, so I did give them credit. So if you know anybody at JLL, just make sure that I did say prepared by JLL on their report. And so you wanted to give me, so what tends to happen in these reports, if you go out and Google and find a multifamily report in Houston, they're really talking about the A-class market, because that's institutional stuff. And so a lot of us guys that do B and C stuff, there are reports out there that are behind some crannies in the cabinets about B and C, but at the end of the day, most of the people at the Rich Club would be more B and C investors just by default of deal size. And that's not belittling. Honestly, that's where the profit is right now. Unless you're an institutional investor, the cap rates are better at B and C properties, specifically C. So what am I seeing? And what I did was I highlighted before I made copies of kind of some things that I think are consistent across the property class. So when I say A, B, does everyone understand what I mean by A, B, and C as far as property class? I don't know how experienced our folks are in here, but essentially that technical definition is A is relatively new, B is over 10 years old, and C typically means over 20 years old. However, we use those terms really interchangeably. We'll say it's a B, is renovated to a B standard in a C area, or we'll say it's a C class property, and then sometimes we'll even say it's a D, F property to try to really tell you what condition it's in. What you will find in Houston, and before I get to what's going on in the market, is most small multifamily is automatically C by default. Why? Because I think it was because of a code change. You do not see new under 100 unit apartment complexes being built in the city of Houston limits at all. Typically the newest property you might see is in the 80s, middle 80s. And then I think it's a code change that started that. So, and the reason for that is because right now I'm building duplexes for my own investment portfolio. And I wanted to really build fourplexes in the city of Houston. I own some lots. I got some lots off the tax foreclosure list. And one of my students, I'm an adjunct professor at Prairie View A&M University. I teach the community development and land development classes at Prairie View in their graduate school. One of my students works for the city of Houston, so I met with her in planning, and she told me that if I go over 3 units under one roof line, it flips to commercial code. Well, what does that mean? I have to have ingress and egress all the way around the property so that so for instance, this office building that we're in now, if you notice, they have to have access for the fire department to be able to get to all sides of the building. In most of the commercial apartment complexes, if you notice, you have to have ingress and egress all the way around so they could get to each building. So if you're building a fourplex, that's kind of way overkill. But the code says, we don't have zoning in Houston, but the code says if I go over 3 units under one roof line, then I flip to commercial code, which means ingress and egress all the way around, which means most likely a fire suppression system. And that's just way overkill for 4 units. And so that's why you're starting to see there's some investment groups that are building in Houston, but in the ETJ, in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, so that they have a Houston address, but they deal with the county. The county does not have that same level of code. So just, that's extra information, but if you ever do that.
You said for apartments, is that the same issue? What was the code change there?
So the code change is what I'm referring to now. I think this is my opinion. I don't know this for a fact because I can't find anybody that has enough history with the city to let me know. My opinion is because of that code change, because they don't, the city, so a lot of these 20 plexes, 36 plexes, 40 plexes are 10 4-unit buildings, right? That's what they really are. And so if I didn't have to worry about that code, I could build on a 10,000 square foot lot, 2 4-plexes, I got 8 units, or 3 4-plexes, I have 12 units. But because it becomes expensive to do that, then because of the code change, then you run into a situation where you have, it just becomes cost. I'm doing the cost now for my 4-plexes, my duplexes, and just on residential costs alone, I'm budgeting $80 a square foot. Well, that puts me at like $180 for my build costs, notwithstanding land, and that's residential code. If I add commercial code to that, and that's with the contractor's fees in it, I'm too busy to do a be your own builder, where I could get that down a little bit. But I say all that to say, to me, it just becomes cost prohibitive from an income standpoint to do that. So with that being said, I took a little diatribe there, but I think it's important to know kind of the history of where we are. The things that I highlighted in this report are the things that I think are the same across asset classes as far as A, B, and C. And the first is that occupancies are up. Occupancies for C class, the last report I looked at, were actually plus 93%. So it is a strong rental market. And what tends to happen, A class properties about 2 years ago were sucking wind. Like they were giving out TVs, firstborn kids, anything that they could do to get folks in there, giving you discounted rent. So a lot of what we call concessions or lost rent to get people in. And so what happens is when a market is sucking like that at the very, very top, they start offering incentives. So people that would normally be in a B class property are now able to afford with incentives A class, and it sucks the market up. So C's can go to B's, and then D's can go to C's, right? But when the market flips, as it has now from the A class standpoint, A class rates, which this report is based off of A class, is really high. And so folks that aren't that strong from a job or credit or whatever the case may be standpoint, or from an income standpoint, that's the number one, they get bumped down to B, and B gets bumped down to C. And so the reason I like C as an investment is no matter what the market is, it's always in the middle of that, right? So I might have to adjust rents over time, but I'm always in the middle of that suck up or go down market. So it's not necessarily recession proof, but it's recession resistant and with rent adjustments, all right? I guess I would first say that the C class market and B class market, and just across the board, occupancy is significantly up. The other thing is rents are up. So again, using that same scenario, A rents are up. They're $1, in some places $1.50, $1.60 a square foot on A class properties, and then you kind of go down from there. I can remember a time when C class properties were leasing at 65 cents to 70 cents a square foot, and now they're leasing at $1.10, even sometimes $1.20 a square foot. So you take 1,000 square foot apartment in a C class, it used to be $850, $800, $750. Now that apartment, depending on the area, is written for plus or minus $1,000, right? A little bit below it, a little bit above it. Again, that depends on the quality as well, but you're getting $1 a square foot in rents. The other thing that's having a huge effect, and I know you guys have been, because you savvy real estate investors have been listening to the news about oil prices, and they're on their way down again, and it always makes us nervous here in Houston, just based on history. However, one thing that is not changing, and I've gone to the Greater Houston Partnership, and I would assume as we do these economic forecasts, usually this is what I call economic forecast season. So around December and January, all of the Greater Houston Partnership, all the chambers, things of that nature will do these economic forecasts. And all of them will tell you that we are the #1 destination for people to move to in the country. One or two always. At one point in time, and I don't know if this is still the case, there was something like 20,000 people a month moving to the Greater Houston area. And so we have a low cost of living. We don't have a state income tax. We're directly in the middle of the country. We have 2 major airports. And even though our property taxes are high comparative to other places because they have state income tax, people like to live in Houston, in Texas specifically. It's Texas as a whole, but Houston specifically. So that growth is the reason that you're still seeing projects go up around the Beltway, in Katy, in North Houston, and a lot of A-class, what we call infill dirt projects going on inside of the loop. And so that demand is basic supply and demand curve. And if you look at the absorption numbers on here, absorption basically meaning that how many new units coming on board and how they're being leased, in other words, absorbed. Absorption numbers are great as well. And so when you see an absorption at these levels, you know that we still cannot meet demand. We did go through a period where we were a little bit overbuilt on the A side, but they finally have kind of caught up. They slowed down for a little while to get caught up, and now they're kind of going out again, but not at the same clip. So rising interest rates. Interest rates have risen based on me closing deals as late as 2 weeks ago, closed on a 24 unit. I got a closing coming up at the end of this month on a 44 unit. And those 2 interest rates are probably quarter of a point to 0.375 separate, and it's the same buyer, right? Same bank. Well, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Different bank. One of them is a community bank. The other one is Freddie Mac has a small balance program that y'all really should do a seminar on, because that program is awesome, by the way. It's a little bit more involved, but the rates and the way they allow you to do it is great. But I digress. Interest rates are rising, but people are still buying. And then again, at this last part of this report says the sheer volume of migration and job creation will undoubtedly have implications on Houston multifamily market. Increased demand should push occupancy over 90%. Again, this is A. So that occupancy being pushed to 90% is going to push downwards as well. So basically what I'm saying is that if you're the owner of a multifamily property in the market, this is one of the best times I've seen in the 20 years I've been in the business, and specifically in the last 10 years when I've been doing almost exclusively commercial and multifamily. Now, what if you're a buyer? Is it a great time for you? And everybody's like, no, because if it's a great time for the seller, it's not a great time for the buyer. What I would say is it depends. It depends. So what this report does not really go over, and what people really want to know is what are the average cap rates. So just in case, capitalization rate is basically a measure of how much income a property is making as a ratio to its sales price. And it's also a measure, a snapshot specifically of, I feel like I'm in class, I just lectured last night, specifically a snapshot so you can be able to compare two properties. So if I have an 8 cap over here and I have a 7 cap over here, if everything is equal, then my 8 cap is better than my 7 cap because it's larger, right? So I just wanted to make sure capitalization rate. So, and so net operating income divided by the purchase price, or different ways to maneuver that based on the pieces of information that you have. You need at least 2 to get one of those. So I say all that to say that I remember 5 years ago, I'm specifically talking about C-class properties, where what I call par, for the golfers in here, the non-golfers, par is how many shots does it take me to get to that hole. If I shoot under that, then I'm negative, which is a good thing. If I shoot over that, like I do, it's positive, right? And I shoot way over that. So with that being said, par for a C-class property in the city of Houston was $30,000 a door. Right, so we value commercial property 2 ways: income approach and comparable approach. Par was $30K a door about five years ago. What does that mean? This is Kevin's definition of par. Someone else might not tell you this, but this is how I look at the market. $30,000 a door was, if you bought at $30,000 and below, it was what we call a value add opportunity. You needed to come in and renovate, maybe shore up the management, you had some work to do. Above $30,000 a door, your expectation should have been that I'm pretty much buying existing cash flow and just buying operations. And I might come in and do my thing, but I'm pretty much okay other than kind of leaky faucets, and I'm not doing a whole renovation package. Well, par for C-Class now is hovering around 52 to 55 a door, right? On a value, on a comps approach. The two deals I just did, one of them I did at 60 a door and it still needs work. The other one I'm selling at 67 a door and it's done. It actually flooded for Harvey, had never flooded before. They renovated it, repiped it. So he's walking into really, and they leased it up. So he's really walking into a renovation that he doesn't have to do anything. He's buying existing operations. So to me, he's getting a deal, and the rents are below market. So I say all that to say that as you look for multifamily opportunities, and when I say per door, that per door price starts at around 10 to 15 units. Below 10 units is kind of a different type of deal. So when I have people calling me about a fourplex and asking me what the cap rate is, cap to me is not a good measure. And some people don't believe it's a good measure overall, but definitely not a good measure for very small multifamily. So I'm talking about 10, 15 units. Again, these are all Kevin's opinions, just based on deal traction and experience. So what are caps? I say all that to say, what are caps? So if you're talking about 60 a door, right now C-Class cap rates are pushing plus or minus 7.5, right? So cap rates are low, values are high. It's an inverse ratio, right? When values are low, cap rates are high, right? We want to catch always, so we want 10 caps. So so I'll get somebody to come take a Rich Club, really nice, good seminar with good information, or they go take some other seminar and they give them a script, and I get the call with the script that says, "Hi, this is Belinda. I'm looking for a property and I need 10 cap or above, 10 to 12 cap." And I say, "Well, you know what, Belinda? Awesome, but I can't help you." And then whatever they teach you the script says, "Oh no, I'm looking to develop a relationship with a broker." No, I'm being funny. So
Is that only in Houston it's like that, or is it
I would say it's in Texas. So a lot of the deals that I sell, Orange County Real Estate Investment Club flew me out last December to come talk to them because their main folks like Linda and Belinda bought a 32 unit from me here in Houston. And when I go to speak around the country, around the cities, I always look on LoopNet or CoStar or something and kind of see what the cap rates. They're pushing 3% cap rates in Cali, where I was. And so when they see a 6 here, they're like, dude, but they don't know, like, I always tell out of town, and I would say, if you're looking outside of here, you got to find somebody local that's going to be truthful with you, because if I just wanted to be a broker and make money, then I could sell 6 caps of C-Class property, but I wouldn't buy a 6 cap C-Class property here. So if that makes sense. In other words, they're seeing 6 and they have their California glasses on, right? And they need to have someone to put some Houston shades on them to kind of calm them down a little bit. And so I talked a lot about that because they're chasing yield in California. A lot of those folks are equity rich. They want to pull some of that money out, but they're not getting those level of returns. So they're looking across the country. And so a lot of them are coming to Texas. And so I would say 50% of my deals in the last 3 years have been out of state as far as buyers are concerned versus local folks.
in your mind, is that you think is causing that value to go up?
No, there's a definite supply. That 60K a door or 55K a door is a direct result of 2 things. One, rents have gone up, so that's a good thing, right? But at the same time, the demand for especially small multifamily significantly increased. So I market to about 3,500 small multifamily owners a month or every other month, right? Either they're getting a letter from me. I try to hit 20 calls a week. I'm just telling y'all, giving y'all a approach from a broker side. And then quarterly, I send out a postcard, right? And so I used to be kind of the only guy, but I was one of the very few doing the small. Now I'm competing with you guys doing the same thing. And I'm competing with the guys from California doing the same thing. And so that demand So I have a lot of sellers I'm dating right now. I call it dating. Like we talked a couple times, I took them out to dinner, or lunch, or we talked, and now I know, I've gotten to know them well, and they're like, oh, I don't know. And then eventually, sometimes I'll date sellers for a year before they'll say, okay, Kevin, I'm ready. But there are also sellers that have been educated in the market, which is nothing wrong with that, and they think the market is wrong on the low side. So I'll tell them, C-Class is selling about $60K a door. Oh, I just replaced all the faucets. It's $80K a door, because those faucets are $20,000 each, So you have a lot of sellers I'm cool with. They say, oh, I'll sell at $80K a door. So I turn around and come to a guy like you guys and say, hey, I got $80K a door. It's a good 3 cap. Are you interested? Y'all, I get that, right? I get a laugh. All right, so of course I don't do that because so I say all that to say, yes, demand has significantly increased. It is my personal opinion that the cost for purchase and renovation versus development are almost the same now. The time is different, so that's the reason I'm building duplexes. Whenever I list a duplex, and I'm listing this duplex to buy and hold, I'm building these duplexes to buy and hold. But it is my opinion that is the new value add, is developing your own. People you typically don't want to wait, right? So do I still get value add stuff? Absolutely. I sold a property about a year ago, and we were at 38 a door, but it needed work. So that was a steal. In fact, the buyer on that, I kicked myself. I just wasn't. I had some stuff going on. Business, well, not that y'all want to know all that, but anyway, I couldn't take that deal myself. But I say all that to say that to me that's the new value add. But with that being said, in my opinion, I don't see in the C-Class market rents retreating hugely significantly. Would you have to ride out a recession? Because are we about to enter into a recession? I'm not an economist. I don't know, but I can definitely tell it's slowing down. And this is my definition, and I've been right every time. I just wish I would have paid attention in 06, 07, 08. When my phone stopped ringing, that is my boots on the ground measure of how the market is. I have enough listings to where I get a significant amount of calls. When it slows down, it gets quiet for days on end, that's when I know it's slowing down. So sometimes it's time of the year, so this is holiday time. But in January, if my phones are doing what they did in October, then I know that if nothing else, we're slowing down. I know it's very unscientific for the quantitative folks in here, but I'm literally the person between the buyer and the seller. And I create the arbitrage. So typically, I try to be the first to know kind of what's going on. And then if you talk to residential agents, especially residential agents, I live out in Sienna Plantation in Missouri City. Residential agents at a price point above, say, 300, it is Jeepers Creepers. It is nobody calling. Right now. So I know for a fact that things have slowed down. Some of that is time of year, but it started slowing down in August. And that's typically not, usually we're strong through September. Again, this is Kevin's economic forecast just based off of the spirit. But again, I just look for that stuff because I never want to get caught in 06, 07, 08 again. I lived through that as a real estate broker. And even though I was listing foreclosures at the time, it still was a very tough time economically for me and those around. So I'm always looking around the corner, seeing if I see the boogeyman, economic boogeyman coming. So cap rates. I always tell my clients, if you see a C-Class property listed at 7.5 or above, it's worth taking a look because you might be able to negotiate yourself into an 8, or there might be a reason where you can get in there. I actually saw a C-Class, it was renovated, sell for like the late 6s, but that's an outlier. Malcolm Gladwell, the bell curve outliers are out here. So this range on that bell curve is 7.5 to 8.5. That's kind of that is the market. So if you can get above that, that's awesome. Below that, then are there, people always call me, and I have a podcast I'll show you guys. I did a podcast on this. I always get a call from you guys. Hey Kevin, this is Belinda. I'm using Belinda because, real estate investor. And then they'll say, do you have any off-market deals? And they whisper. All right, like literally, or they'll say the word off-market like it's a secret. And so everybody wants off-market deals. I understand. I want off-market deals. But some of the off-market deals are worse than the on-market deals right now. And just because it's off-market does not mean it's a deal. But I say all that to say that the cash flow and the opportunity for you guys, I think, as investors, is in development, like literally development, and then looking for properties in that range for C class. Now, if you go to A class clap rates are plus or minus 5, right? 5%. B class is somewhere in the arbitrage. It's kind of hard to kind of peg that out because it's usually A or C. Now, some of the very large C classes are trading in the late 6s, early 7s, like 250 units and things of that nature. So if you're into syndications and partnerships, you can do that. My point, I digress. I always get that call off market, and I always get, I want a value add. In fact, I will tell you now, if I put the word value add in one of my listings on LoopNet or on CoStar or Comgate or Crexy and all the other listing services out there, just the word, whether it's value add or really or not, just the word makes my phone ring, right? So everybody's looking for value add. But people are also only looking for physical value add. How can I renovate the property in such a way that I will derive additional income? Because you want value add so you can create equity, right, and income. But a lot of people don't know there's other ways to create value add, and that's in management. There are a lot of mom and pops out there that have been inefficient in their management. If you really understand how to look at their books and see where you can get efficiencies, maybe go to what we call a RUB system instead of having all bills paid or things of that nature, where you could derive value add even though you're at $60K a door at the market, right? And so that's a different way of value add that takes a little bit more work to see, because you can't drive by and see RUBs. You can't drive by and see that they've been paying. 3 years ago, I sold a 24 unit, and I was like, man, this place is renting, it's good financials, it's not making any money. And so the seller pulled me to the side and said, hey, look, I got 2 kids in college. You see that payroll number? They're on the payroll. That's how I give them their college money so that I can lessen the income. And that's what investors do. I feel you. My car's sitting down there, my wife's car. They are business cars, which mine is. My wife's is too, just in case IRS is listening. I understand that. But being able to answer those questions and look for those efficiencies, and that's one way where an investor is eating out of their own pot. But there's other ways as well. They're paying for something that you wouldn't do, or they've never renegotiated their trash contract. Or they've never gone in and spent the possible money to repipe their sewer stuff, and that's causing constant repairs. Which, by the way, if you remember anything else I say today, if you ever buy a property older than 1985 in Houston that's 20 units or 20 units or above, during due diligence, get the sewer cameraed to see if it is, 1, galvanized steel or PVC, 2, if it's galvanized steel, is it broken? Trust me on that. Trust me. That's one of the most expensive repairs, especially if they have to go in. And one of my clients learned that the hard way. So that is kind of a market overview. Any questions about the market that I didn't cover? I kind of went. I didn't have any. I had this prepared / not prepared. I wanted to be informal. So. Hey, thanks for listening as always. Do you have questions about any of the topics I'm talking about? If you have questions, let me know. Email me at kevin@kevinriles.com. Again, that's kevin@kevinriles.com. I'm going to do a podcast just on the questions that you guys are sending me. So feel free to send them to me. Again, that's kevin@kevinriles.com.